Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a story that started out as, a simple scientific study, and then it just spiraled into this global sensation of truly epic proportions. It's a wild tale of data, debate, and a flood of very, very specific tourism. Okay, let's just jump right in with a number that is pretty staggering. 54,875%. And no, we're not talking about the stock market or some new crypto coin. This is something else entirely. So what on earth could cause a spike like that? I mean, a visa application surge of over 54,000% to just one country. To figure that out, we got to rewind the clock just a few days, to the moment a certain research paper dropped and, sent shockwaves around the world.
Yeah, it all kicked off not with a travel brochure, but with a peer-reviewed paper from a pretty respected place, the University of Oslo's Institute for Anthropometric Amplitudes. And let's just say their findings were, they were big.
So what exactly did this paper, which by the way was titled Memory Metrics, a Nordic Nucleus, what did it actually find? Let's get into the data that kicked this whole thing off.
All right, so get this. The study looked at 12,000 volunteers, did all these 3D scans and hormone tests, and the results were pretty clear. Norway came out on top with an average of 34 dd. That's a whole cup size bigger than its closest competitors, which the paper called statistically significant.
Now, the researchers didn't just drop these numbers and walk away. Nope, they came up with a very, very Norwegian explanation. They pointed to two things. First, Viking vigor, the idea that strong genetics from their seafaring ancestors played a part. And second, salmon synergy, this theory that all the omega-3s in their diet were, contributing to fat distribution in a very specific way.
The lead researcher, Dr. Ingrid Ingebrigtsen, she was really quick to say, hey, this is pure science. She argued it wasn't about vanity, but virology. Her words. She said it was all about how cold climates make the body store calories, and evolution's endowment, as she put it.
Right, the global décolletage debate. I mean, come on, a study like this, there was no way it was going to stay in some quiet academic journal. The reaction was instant, it was intense, and it kicked off this huge debate that was, part science, part culture, and a whole lot of sensationalism.
And you can see that divide right here, especially with Norway's neighbors. In Norway, you had this huge swell of national pride. But over in Denmark, they were crying data distortion, and Finland was fuming about fjord favoritism. So yeah, a lot of skepticism.
And this whole thing got personal fast. The scientific disagreement turned into this public spat. You had Dr. Sven Svensson from Sweden basically saying it's about quality, not quantity. Ours are perkier, he said. Yours just protrude. Ouch. But Dr. Ingebrigtsen fired right back, defending her data and pointing to things like dairy and a lack of daylight as factors.
But while the academics were arguing, the business world was already cashing in. Lingerie shops in Oslo saw a 15% jump in export inquiries pretty much overnight. One brand even shipped 20,000 bras called Fjords and Forms to France. The boom was on. Okay, let's move on, because this whole thing just snowballed from a cultural debate into, a logistical phenomenon, really. The interest wasn't just about buying things. People wanted to go see the data for themselves.
1.2 million, that's the number of people the media started calling mammary migrants. These were folks who suddenly wanted to go on cultural curiosity cruises to Norway right after the study came out. The immigration office was just flooded.
And to meet this unique demand, this whole cottage industry just popped up out of nowhere. I'm talking tour companies with buses and binoculars, spas offering aspirational augmentation massages, even curve curator consultants. You can't make this stuff up.
Norwegian immigration officials, they were pretty blunt about what was going on. As Undersecretary Ulrik Ulriksen put it, people were writing scenic studies on their visa applications, but it was pretty clear they were there to scope out the silhouettes.
All right, Norway's tourism tsunami. So this wasn't just online chatter anymore. This interest became a very real, very overwhelming reality. That trickle of tourists, it turned into a flood, and the country's infrastructure was about to be seriously tested. 6,000%. According to Visit Norway, that's how much tourism shot up. A 6,000% increase. In just 2 weeks, 3.4 million bus buffs, as one newspaper hilariously called them, poured into the city of Bergen alone.
And the situation on the ground, it just got wild. One official called it a voyeur vortex. Airports had to add special luggage and lifts lanes for people with heavy camera gear. Ferries were swamped. There were pop-up pavilions with augmented reality apps. It even inspired an opera called Ode to the Overcupped. An opera!
You know, even the author of the study, Dr. Inga Brixen, had to admit things had gotten out of hand. She said, "We've got genetic gawkers gawking at grocery clerks." Her purely scientific work had kicked off this social stampede, totally blurring the line between academic research and, well, a public spectacle.
So this brings us to the big question. Bust or boom? What's the real legacy of this whole crazy event? Was it a huge economic win for Norway, or was it just a massive societal headache that overshadowed everything else?
From just across the border, Dr. Sven Svensson, Norway's scientific rival, he got the last word. His verdict was dripping with a little bit of schadenfreude. He basically said, "You deal with your chaotic bounty. Sweden's serenity sells just fine."
And that's really where the story leaves us. It's a provocative final thought, isn't it? For Norway, it became this incredibly tricky balancing act, weighing the swell and shekels against the souring of sidewalks, a question of whether to embrace the boom or find a way to bust it, a dilemma that remains unresolved.